GM everyone, this is Tyler Scharf from Crowdmuse, and I am sitting here with Emmanuel Aremu, who is the Growth Marketing Manager at Optimism Unlimited. And this is Orbit Creator Editions, where we interview people and listen to the voices of the creators behind the products and the drops that we do. Emmanuel, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It's a nice winter's day, but really excited to kind of round out the year. It's been an amazing year for Onchain creativity, and I'm looking
hmm
forward to chatting with you, Tyler.
Yeah, it has been. Well, I guess we're nearing that point in time where we reflect on what has happened this year and make our resolutions for the next year. So, what's one thing that stood out to you this year in terms of creativity?
Oh, that's such a good question. I really love this year more than anything, just seeing how different collectors come together and support each other. So whether it's like, A, supporting in terms of onboarding new artists who are kind of curious about Web3, but obviously onboarding them on chain, and B, also kind of leveling up their skill sets and opportunities within the collectors as well. It's really cool to kind of see that happen. Obviously on Twitter mainly, but obviously kind of be as, launched a couple of different contests as well, kind of be able to see that come to fruition when it comes to all sorts of different creativity coming over from the entire different areas of the globe as well.
Yeah. We've seen a lot more coordination, collaboration, and people are getting more keen into it. They see more of the long term game, the consumer crypto, the collaboration on chain, and how it's enabling all kinds of different initiatives around the globe here. So
Absolutely.
yeah, great. So, I mean, before we get into that, I wanted to touch on your background a little bit here because, I mean, marketing's a big thing in what you do, but what is it that brought you into Web3 in the first place here? What is it that kind of piqued your interest?
Piqued my interest, curiosity. Yeah, that was just me being curious and just being way too online.
Yeah,
I discovered
all of
like
us.
all of us essentially. I discovered like Bitcoin for the very first time around 2014. Bought some on a random wallet, completely forgot about it. Not a life-changing amount, just want to put it out there. So please
Enough
don't
to
come after
notice,
me.
though, right?
Enough to be like, oh, that's cute. But yeah, like that was a fun experience. Really interesting user journey experience as well. But then obviously kind of was able to kind of see things from the sidelines for a number of years. And then I think like after DeFi summer of when DeFi summer happened, a friend of mine who was in a space was like, look, like you really need to get involved. There's so many different things happening. And it's like, oh, DeFi summer just happened. I'm like, DeFi summer, what is that? Some like festival or something? Like what's that? Uh but then then I went away, I did my own research.
Festival of Food and Frogs, yeah.
Hey man, in France that'll be popping for sure. I think yeah, so like I just kind of went away, did my own research, and kind of said, okay, these are applications are coming online, like so many dApps, ecosystems popping up, and then ultimately to kind of see that there was a messaging and customer journey issue with the space, which is obviously we're still
hmm
fixing right now.
hmm
And that's why, my skill set, having worked in startups before, from literally from the being very first market employee to kind of help scale things up. I thought, okay, cool, this opportunity to get involved in ground level about something that's quite seismic and changing across the entire globe.
Right.
And yeah, so I was like, look, like let me just dive into it and see what happens. And yeah, I've been involved in space for a couple of years now, and it's never a dull day in Web3 for sure. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. No, it's a roller coaster all the time. Yeah, we live on the fringe. So you talk about your skills in startups. What is it that you find so like what's the crossover here? Because OP's no startup, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I always laugh when someone internally is like, "Hey, like we're still a scrappy startup." I'm like, "You're not a scrappy startup, please." Um, yeah, the way I look at OP more than anything, I think it's just a case of it's twofold, right? It's like a kind of increasing opportunity and scaling Ethereum to the next level is a massive part of that messaging and ethos ultimately. But also, I think the second point, which is definitely more poignant point, is like is really just allowing like on-chain creativity kind of scale up across the entire spectrum from developers all the way to like builders, community members as well. And what I mean by that is like how can you fundamentally impact and introduce like processes that kind of scale up productivity on a massive scale. And there's certain mechanisms that Optimism is able to pull on, like for RetroPGF, retroactive public goods funding,
hmm
is like a bunch of sequencer fees goes back into the ecosystem to kind of support projects that don't necessarily have the most easy, easy to invest. They don't necessarily have like a mandate to easily invest from an investor perspective, at least initially, but they have a massive amount of positive good and impact within the broader ecosystem. And that's like from dev tooling to for infrastructure projects and contributors all the way down to like educators and creators who are bringing whole node of people into the space from a user perspective, and also onboarding creators from a creator perspective as well. So like really kind of using that mechanism to kind of accelerate this whole new paradigm of online activity. I think that's what really drew me into the role. Is like the Optimism's got some really cool levers to pull that could create a lot of impact. And if you've been online for the last couple of weeks when the end, I think it was the round three voting was ending for RetroPGF, you can see about the interest feedback and suggestions around RetroPGF alone kind of indicates that there's something here that needs to be, tweaked and iterated for sure, but definitely something that's
Mm-hmm.
adding a lot of value back into the broader ecosystem. And for me, I think that, RetroPGF is definitely one example of ways of like impacting, a lot of production creativity on quite a very basic level, but also more impactful layer as well. So that's definitely what I want to play around in. And then, we've done some examples of that within the creative space, which we're probably going to touch on in a minute or so. But yeah, definitely,
Mm-hmm.
putting on all those big levers have the biggest amount of impact within the space for sure.
So, RetroPGF, how would you describe that to someone who's like not in the space or not familiar with this entire ecosystem?
So I've somewhat you could be the judge.
Yeah.
I've somewhat kind of like put together a short little explanation of it. Like for me, the way I view Reg PGF is like you are being rewarded for your contributions,
Mm-hmm.
positive contributions to a broader community. That's how I view it, basically.
Yeah.
And in our case, especially with HPGF, is like how you contribute towards the broader optimism ecosystem. So whether you're deploying stuff on Zora, or whether you're doing collections on there as an artist, whether you are deploying new types of like social dApps on base, for example, like you're basically doing cool innovative things which are like attracting end users, kind of onboarding people to the space, or you're a developer who's building quite fundamental parts of the ecosystem when it comes to infrastructure, dev tooling, which as a VC you're probably not going to invest into yourself initially, but at the same time that's so valuable and important to the broader ecosystem as well. And like as you can see through the last two rounds of winners, it's quite a broad spectrum of people who are contributing towards it. You've got people who are basically producing infrastructure that's been used across not even just Optimism, but the broader Ethereum ecosystem as well. So it's a case of like, how do you kind of support some of those? Sometimes it might just be one person, it might just
Mm-hmm.
be a couple of people who dedicating their life and energy towards that. You want that public good to continue. So that's why the funding is there available off the back of the sequencing fees that come through the Optimism network. It goes back into some of those initiatives and things that people are building. Um, and yeah, that's kind of. I know I gave you the long version, but also gave you the short version as well. So hopefully that has a nice medium.
So it's kind of like I would say trying to incentivize more pluralism and like diverse contributions, creativity, and types of things like that on the chain, right?
Exactly,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, that's critical for an organism to grow, is it has to have diverse experiences and be open to those types of things coming through. So by setting up direct incentive mechanisms for it, it does make sure that it doesn't enter into kind of like a I don't know, like a stagnant period of non-growth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's important to have that diverse, you know, array of contributors kind of rewarded for the public as they provide the broad ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Because as in terms of my time, even before I joined the Optimism ecosystem, spoke to other developers and builders been across a number of different ecosystems. The fundamental thing is like, can you support with different users and users, different creativities that happen on chain, and if you can't fundamentally bring that to different projects and all, across different verticals, you're not really going to be able to have a sustainable ecosystem that's going to support with fees, sequence fees that are going to go back into RetroPGF essentially. So you need to fundamentally think about, okay, how can you reward public, positive public behavior across a multitude of different contributors, because you can't just focus on it's only for developers. It's like
Yeah.
developers are the number of developers in Web3 is not going to support the number of dApps that are being built. You
Right.
need far more than that. You need creators, you need community members across the board, people who love governance. Like you need everyone to kind of chip in
Yeah.
to kind of help increase that footprint. Shout out to the governance nerds. You know who you are.
It's a new
So you
form of
need to make sure
politics,
you have
right?
it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is, and like I think we recently got featured in a Stanford paper, if I'm correct. It's gonna we're gonna do a weekly roundup on Friday. Going to share that with people, so they
Okay.
can also see that as well. So yeah, it's just like there's a multitude of different people contributing,
Hmm.
and you really have to think about the entire landscape to make sure they're fundamentally rewarded for the positive impact they make within the ecosystem.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, that's the flywheel. So cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I do see the diversity argument there for sure. I want to touch a little bit on the drop that we did recently between Crowdmuse and
Yes.
Optimism for Onchain Summit. So
Mm-hmm.
what drew you to Crowdmuse? Why did you feel that we were the ones that you wanted to do this drop with?
Because the team is sick. End
Okay.
question. I'm playing. Yes, so like, was very fortunate to connect with Maz and Iman at FW Fest, and like, we were literally just internally back put together some ideas around how to really make Onchain Summit quite different, because Onchain Summit was the very first full day of programming that Optimism had collectively done to kind
Hmm.
of promote the ecosystem, kind of allow people to come learn about what's been built. I want to do something a little bit different. Did not want to just hand out merch to kind of signify, okay, this event happened.
Hmm.
We kind of wanted to, a work with a partner within a space that knows the area quite well, is doing things quite differently. So I first came across, from a minter perspective, Crowdmuse by, you know, participated in a mint for FW Fest in terms of getting one of the shirts for
Yeah.
that, and the process is quite quite slick, quite clear, quite easy to follow to myself. So I was like, cool, this is a really cool experience, and was able to meet the team at the festival itself, and was able to build that collective relationship. And so when it came time around to, okay, how can we think about doing something quite different for Onchain Summit? Yeah, it was like cool. Like, let's collaborate with Crowdmuse. I think we do like your approach of like it's quite a seamless end user journey. So if you even though you don't necessarily ever minted NFT before, the experience is not too dissimilar for when you're experiencing something from an e-commerce perspective. So having that journey is quite reticent because you don't know who's going to turn up to a particular conference when you're hosting it essentially. So yeah, wanted to reach out to the team, was able to kind of build that relationship, and then yeah, we did a really cool, awesome drop, I have to say, for Unchained Summit. And the really interesting thing, to be honest with you, on the ground was that when I was at Onchain Summit, I collected my sorry, minted NFT, redeemed it, collected my sweatshirt at the conference itself. So I
Hmm.
was walking around and people would say, "Oh, where did you get that from?" I was like, "Oh, if you go speak to the wonderful people at Crowdmuse, you could basically get one of the last few remaining NFTs, and obviously you're able to redeem that at a later time for your sweatshop as well." And then literally, I think at like 2 days after the summit, we completely sold out. 100 pieces
Yeah.
for that limited edition mint was completely sold out. So yeah, it was really kind of obviously amazing to collaborate with the whole team from start to finish, from like putting the whole concept together of how can we tie Onchain Summit, the very first Optimism led summit, kind of tie it to being hosted during Devconnect in Istanbul as well, but doing it in a way that kind of honored the local culture, but also kind of having something quite unique and distinct to remember the event by. And yeah, I swear by that sweatshirt. The quality is amazing. Like definitely embodies the sustainability ethos that Crowdmuse does as well. So like
Hmm.
it ticks all the boxes in terms of like the values that we hold as well. We're trying to build sustainability, RetroPGF and a context we're going to talk about in a minute, but then also like we do things in a way that's like kind of unique and stands out there as well. So it was just a perfect match, and yeah, like love the sweatshirt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we try to make it like a smooth e-commerce type of experience, but what makes it more
Yeah,
unique is that the blockchain enables the co-creation, right? So it's not just
yeah, yes.
like a single player, one artist, one type of person creating a product, but then there's the opportunity for multiplayer collaboration. So, I mean, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that as well, like the process of co-creation, because like in your typical e-commerce experience, even if you have some unique sustainable merch, it would just be kind of like a a buy and sell online type thing. But what was different in like the process of co-creation here and your learnings along the way, maybe working with the Crowdmuse team?
Yeah, like honestly, like you guys have an amazing set of creators on your team. I think that's definitely one thing that is a massive relief, and like it allows, instead of you having to source amazing creators to work with, you kind of are enabled by that via Crowdmuse. Whether it's like whoever was chosen to kind of design the shirt itself, also the 3D artists we used kind of developed this Optimism character who had the sweatshirt, and there was like some movement around it. So use the 3D elements as well. That's something that, we wouldn't necessarily have the time or energy to kind of find that person who is expert, able to turn that around, through many iterations to get the right assets we needed for that particular drop. But then also, like, more importantly, just to think about the entire end process. Okay, logistics, and how do we get this to the right people? And like, okay, do we need a certain amount of shit towards the event as well? That just takes a lot of, mental energy, which is, instead of it being focused on more the logistics side, it's focused more on the creative side. So like, we're able to kind of move very quickly in terms of, okay, here's the first couple of iterations we're working with in terms of what the spreadsheet will actually look like. How does it feel? How does it look like as well? So the team are really, really helpful in terms of not just hand holding, but obviously going on this creative journey together, which is, really, really appreciated from my side, because I had a multitude of other things I needed to tackle.
Yeah, no
And
kidding.
like, working with working with the Crowdmuse team was like such a massive stress reliever. And like, okay, I could 100% trust you guys. Whatever you put in front of me has been well intentional, well thought out, and really just tied into the broader mission of what we're trying to accomplish. So yeah, they're like literally just like from start to finish, like the whole collaboration was really awesome. Like even random suggestions I will have, like the team will listen, okay, how can we incorporate this in a way that makes sense for any user? Like from our perspective, like we've got a very vibrant creative community who like to just give them an asset or do some really funky stuff with it.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, cool, like for this particular drop, like in terms of different assets that are available, let's put some, RetroPGF stuff inside there, let's put some Onchain Summit stuff inside there, let's have some of the assets that people could play around with in their own way, and like feed it up to the community, and let's see what they create. So that's the sort of thing, like, it was just a throwaway idea, but like, the team kind of brought that on board and like was able to execute that quite seamlessly, or because the marketplace kind of enables that co-creation through, creators who are team itself in terms of team creation, but also the creators who are also part of the drop as well.
Yeah, I mean, we do aim to give a curatorial experience, but then also the key part there is that there's a part of, you are involved as well, right? And
Yeah, 100%.
that's most important thing, is to kind of help the voices of everyone, not just the artist, but everyone involved in the process to come through, so that there's
Yeah,
a real
100%.
multiplayer experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. Really cool,
So
really cool.
yeah, I'd like to chat a little bit about We Love the Art. So could you tell me a little bit about the story behind your We Love the Art campaign, and like why this is an important part of the on-chain experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll be remiss without shouting out to, to the base team. The base team did an excellent job in terms of like Onchain Summer.
Hmm.
Summer, working across multitude of different brands, and, doing awesome jobs throughout that particular time period. And like the way we thought about it is like, look, like, we wanted to do something that kind of, brings a lot of creators to the forefront, especially a lot of emerging creator talent. And the best way to kind of scale it up was like to do We Love the Art. So essentially, the idea of it came around about like, okay, how can we support new upcoming emergent artists and kind of like allow some on-chain creativity to kind of explode essentially. So essentially, the launch of We Love the Art was like, how can we focus, a really cool incentive mechanism to kind of allow that to kind of flourish. So we have a million, now it's 1.2 million OP prize pool available to a ton of creators. About 188 winners essentially will be selected, 47 winners per category, and the categories are AI art, generative art, music, and one of ones. And essentially, the content's been running since early November and is, concluding on January 8th, 11 p.m. UTC. I say it once and I say it again, January 8th, 11 p.m. UTC.
Listen carefully.
And essentially, I've got to be.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's kind of led to this massive explosion in creativity on, across different networks. So we've expanded the contest to include superchain networks such as, Base and Zora. So if you're a creator in those categories I mentioned, you're able to kind of, do mints, submit them, and obviously they'll get judged by kind of exhaustive list of different judges across, the music area, generative art, one of ones, and also like, really just trying to, and ARR as well, like really just trying to allow, a lot of creativity to come to forefront. And I kid you not, a highlight for me over the last couple of weeks now is like on a Monday, Tuesday, I kind of sit down and like look through some of the submissions. I'm just like, this is sick. It really is like the caliber of artists coming through as well as it kind of get towards the end of the contest has been really interesting as well.
Hmm.
On the music side, like, it seems like every drop is pretty pretty amazing to kind of listen to as well. And yeah, just from top to bottom, everyone's been really supportive on that. Like, so we launched the contest November 8th, alongside partners like Stability AI, like as I mentioned, based on Zora's networks, across a multitude of different marketplaces like, Manifold, Decent, Highlight. So like it's a multitude of different people we're working with to kind of allow creators through different avenues to kind of deployments on the OP mainnet, Base, Zora, and ultimately bring that creativity to the content itself. At the bare minimum, like sorry, I should have said at the very top. In terms of the prizes breakdown, so we got 50k OP, 20k OP, 7k OP, and 1000 OP essentially. And at the very minimum, you're going to be walking away with like 1000 OP if you're one of the winners, very minimum. And at the very top end, it's like 50k OP. That's a substantial
It's quite a good
amount of
amount,
OP
yeah.
to kind of yeah, it's to kind of kickstart or kind of accentuate someone's on-chain creative journey essentially. And that's where we're at, right? It's like we speak to developers, we speak to different projects, and everyone keeps going back to like how can they deploy into the Optimism ecosystem? How can they deploy in Superchain? How can they kind of build ecosystem off the back of that? And for
Hmm.
me, it's always like you mentioned the flywheel previously. The flywheel I look at, I recognize is that you need you need stuff happening on chain to help attract developers to build more stuff within a particular ecosystem, and that helps bring more people on chain and increase that
Yeah.
flywheel. So you kind of have to provide both sides of that marketplace essentially. I'd be really intentional about different programs to accentuate that. And we love the art. Like the response has been pretty amazing. We regularly do AMAs and kind of clue people up in terms of different categories and answering as many questions as I possibly can in the Discord as well. Yep, I'm getting pinged right now. So
Never
it
ends.
never ends. It
Yeah.
never ends. Never ends. But like honestly, like it's been an absolute joy to kind of see the sort of art that people are putting through, but also people who have never literally the one of the coolest things is people who've never interacted with sound before ever said, "Hey, I didn't know sound was so easy to use and so cheap." Like literally the shock in people posing that statement was like, how can you? So that's the thing is like really kind of spotlighting the amazing stuff that's happening, the amazing marketplaces that are available, deployed on Base, Zora, and OP mainnet, but also kind of say, hey, like these tools are out there, and just like bringing it together, putting it from creators, and let's see what they create essentially. And the way we look at the contest is like this is the first version of it. There's going to be some iterations for the next one, and next one, God willing, bigger, better, bolder. But then also really try to tie to certain things that we definitely do better on the educational side. Sorry, and then obviously like we've got a quite great list of partners and people who want to work with us in terms of like different aspects, and that includes yourself. No, I'm not leaking out alpha now, but like how can we kind of continue the momentum,
Yeah.
help onboard more people into this space, and help bring on-chain creativity into different partners that we're working with as well. So that's definitely how we definitely want to approach it going forward with We Love the Art.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting because when you think about like the evolution of what draws people to the blockchain is obviously like it's very financially incentivized at the early days, and then now well we had that period where it was strictly just like ICOs and coins and blah blah blah. Then it moved towards art, right? But then a lot of the art was also extremely speculative, where artists would just throw things on the blockchain and then people would buy it out of the scarcity because they think there's only 100 or there's only 10 and it's got a number go up, right? And then once we kind of like move past this entire like financialized obsession, now there's these initiatives like what you're doing, just like not only OP but also the greater ecosystem with Zora and Base as well to try and like bring in a more like holistic and sustainable artistic community. So then as people who are not familiar with the blockchain ecosystem come in and they look at it, then they don't think that it's just like dog coins and monkey pictures, but there's also
Thank
some
God.
they are there, but
uh,
then it's interesting
yeah,
because
of course,
they
yeah,
exist, but then the marketing image, like I believe that big part of this is like the public facing image is like, look, we are helping to enable artists, we're helping to bring this to better communities, we're growing the ecosystem. So by it's kind of like drowning out the noise of the um, the less savory speculative assets with more of a cleaner, like I would say, benevolent growth of an ecosystem type of model, right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the most long-term sustainable approach to it, because unfettered degeneracy will probably scare a lot of people off. Because when some people are faced with that type of energy and vibe, it's like, whoa, that is
Crazy, yeah.
intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's intense and crazy.
Yeah.
And like, shout out to my friends in random Telegram groups doing some crazy stuff I will not touch. But there is a space for that, right? And I think you're quite right. It's like, how can you paint a broader picture to say, okay, here's what's possible within the space. So some people, they would like to try a lot of a lot of technologies that's available, a lot of dApps that are kind of proliferated, but in a way that's like, more user friendly, that still kind of delivers the end result they want, but in a way that's packaged that kind of helps bring on a crap ton of more people into this space. And I think playing in that area will definitely have a broader ecosystem and like allow kind of a lot more things to flourish, because you're bringing in people who would have they're interacting with a random like landing page, for example, but on the back end, you're doing some crazy stuff on L2. Like you would have never thought about it, but your end result is that you kind of get this really cool tailored experience. And I think that's the way. Yeah, I think that sort of creativity and ingenuity is definitely what's going to take the space to another level. It's like, how can we bring some new cool experiences to people's lives they've never would experience elsewhere? I think that's the magic that needs to be. It's slowly being unlocked, but I definitely think it's going to be unlocked a little bit more. I'm heading into next year and many more years to come.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of a good way to round this down here actually, is I'd like to hear your thoughts on where, the on-chain ecosystem is evolving, and then obviously the role that creativity has in it, but like what's your vision for the future here in the next couple of years?
Ah, wow, next couple of years. I definitely think for the next couple of years, we are in the onboarding and educational phase.
Mm-hmm.
So onboarding doesn't necessarily mean that you're going out to teach people the ABCs of this space. People are very smart, like especially people who are extremely online, like in our case, they will figure it out.
Yep.
It's a case of like, having quality experiences and products ultimately that give people a reason to be onboarded into a space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, it was like, discovering some random oh, the degeneracy I used to be involved in. But like for me, it was like, okay,
We
cool,
all
like
have
this
our
is cool.
backgrounds, yeah.
And then it was a bit of that, but also like the culture piece of it, like NFTs and now on-chain creativity, on-chain art is like that's what drew me into this space a little bit more. It's like, okay, this is really fascinating. And like, for my example, I'm a massive basketball fan,
Mm-hmm.
and discovering NBA Top Shot, I was like, okay, what NBA Top Shot? Okay, Dap Labs, okay, what the heck is Flow? And that kind of led me further down the rabbit hole essentially. And if we start to like marry a lot of the technology with a lot of like native things that people are accustomed to, Web2 and other ecosystems, I think that's ultimately going to help onboard a massive ton of people. And that's just I'm just talking about like from a creative perspective, and not even touching on like if you look at like my background is Nigerian, like I've got family back home. Trying to send money across is still a massive pain.
Oh yeah.
But then Tron is massive across the continent of Africa. Like
Yep.
these sort of things of like from a payments perspective, there's a lot
Infrastructure.
of ground to be covered. Exactly, a lot of infrastructure things that need to be covered, and
Yep.
I think that's an area which I definitely think the space will also be fall into. On more the creative side, right, is really having to think of like who is curious about the space that is open to collaborate. I think if we start to collaborate with people who are curious but also want things done in a way that's kind of regular, like that resonates with their brand and their community, I think those are sort of people to kind of leverage for different partnerships and the educational aspects are like I mentioned, like okay, what the heck is NFT? What the heck is a wallet? Those sorts of educational pieces. If you collaborate with people who are in a Web 2.5, kind of like curious about Web 3 experience, I think that's ultimately going to help, like help with the education aspect of it all. And I think if by tackling those two pieces, where you're onboarding creators, you're onboarding developers, end users in a way that's like that resonates with those segments more importantly, you're going to have an explosion of far more amazing experiences, far amazing apps going to come online, and then you could layer on the piece of, okay, how do you bring the governance angle through something like RetroPGF into the real world? That's the next big hairy thing that's down the road, and like who
Smoothly,
knows in a
yeah.
couple of years
Yeah.
time.
Because we have the
In a couple of
concepts,
years,
but
go
there's
on.
still lots of friction there, right, in the user experience. I
Exactly.
mean, it's very interesting, yeah, because we're going through that product cycle where we're getting things that are like, actually incentivizing people, but then trying to get that ownership layer balanced is the trick, right? Because there's still a lot of
Mhm.
skew in terms of like those who hold a lot of it and those who don't. So,
Exactly, exactly. And you want to get into the people who this could impact, but don't aren't necessarily aware of like the broader ecosystem, right? And that's the fine details and the fine area you kind of want to play in is like, okay, how can you proliferate this to as many more people as possible? And I'm working on it as much as possible. I know the team is, and like far many more people in the collective are working towards that as well. And that's how we build this stuff like the super chain, which is like bringing everyone together to kind of work to make it as seamless experience as possible for anyone who comes into the space, interacting with all these different projects as well. And like for me, like a couple of years time, who knows how big We Love the Art's going to be? Like it's going to become its own creative festival as well.
Yeah.
Like who knows? But definitely just trying to push it as much as possible and like give the opportunity to kind of allow creators to showcase their on-chain artistic expression and in cool ways as well. So like that's definitely what we try to do, and more partners, more contests, and like help kind of proliferate the meme that on-chain creativity is definitely here to stay. It's just a case of how many people want to play in that particular sandbox as well.
Oh yeah, and we're seeing curiosity on creativity growing every day here. So I think that the future is bright.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Optimistic
Awesome.
future. Excuse the
Optimistic, yeah.
pun.
Yeah, stay optimistic. Yeah.
Always stay optimistic. Got it.
Oh
Got
yeah,
it.
we love it. Yeah, don't we? Well, I mean, it's a good brand name, right? I mean, you don't want anything pessimistic by all means. So,
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's a shout out to I don't even know who picked Optimism as the actual name of the company, but like shout out to them, whoever did that. I still haven't found out who did, but I'm gonna find out who actually did soon. So
yeah,
like yeah, it's well, I was like from a branding perspective, I'm like that is so on point. But you got to deliver that. But we got some cool new things on a brand level that's gonna come out. I'm not gonna leak any alpha here, but like yeah, some exciting
cool.
things on that end as well. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun year next year for sure.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to it. Well, thanks very much, Emmanuel. I mean, it was great talking to you. We love
Nice.
hearing your insights here. So,
No
yeah,
worries.
this is another edition of Orbit Creator Editions, and we are speaking with Emmanuel from Optimism about the Crowdmuse drop that we recently did for Stay Optimistic On-Chain Summit. It was a sweatshirt that we released at Devconnect in Istanbul, and it's sold out. So sorry for the FOMO, but maybe next time. Yeah,
Next time. Yep. Yeah, I was chatting to Maz. Yeah, we definitely got a few things we want to work with you guys on for sure. So yeah, next year is gonna be a busy year for sure.
oh yeah, we're all going to be running around. Yeah. So thank you very much.
No worries. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.